Yes, living in the United States is better than living in Canada, and it's okay to admit that. Alright, what is going on, everyone? My name is Chris Vincelli, and welcome to my YouTube channel. And as the title of this video suggests, I'm going to go over why living in the United States is better than living in Canada. Okay? Got that? Good. Now, before I get into that, if you like what you see, feel free to smash that like button and go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. It really helps me understand what type of content I should keep putting out there, and it helps let you know whenever I come out with other great and similar content. Now, recently I made a video entitled Why Living in Canada Sucks. You can find it right here. And surprisingly, many of you guys liked it. Maybe it's because there aren't many videos out there explaining why living in Canada sucks, or maybe it's just because someone finally had the cojones to tell the truth. And in preparing for that video, I actually noticed that a lot of videos on YouTube didn't really explain the hardships of living in Canada. And a lot of videos actually did the opposite. A lot of videos glorified Canada, especially when compared to the United States. Needless to say, I was not impressed with the content of those videos. Clearly, those videos are not truthful. Living in the United States is a lot better than living in Canada. I know people like to say the opposite. For some reason, it's fashionable to think Canada is a much better country to live in. No, they're wrong. The United States is a much better country to live in than Canada. And I should know, I'm a Canadian. I was born and raised in Canada. I lived the first 25 years of my life in Canada. I now live in the United States, and I can tell you with certainty that living in America is a lot better than living in Canada. So in this video, I'm going to describe the 5 reasons why I think so, the 5 ways in which the United States is a better country to live in. All right, I'm going to dive right into it. And the first reason why I think living in the United States is better than living in Canada is the opportunity for work. Look, both countries have low unemployment rates and pretty strong economies. Actually, I would say very strong economies. But the opportunity for work in Canada is a lot more limited when compared to the United States. That is because Canada is essentially dominated by a handful of industries, whereas in the United States, you find almost every single industry represented in some way, shape, or form. So let me give you an example. In Canada, the main industries tend to be energy, so the oil and gas industry, mining, and banking. Outside of those 3 industries, you don't find many other industries based, headquartered, or located in Canada. Really, the oil and gas industry, the mining industry, and the banking industry really tends to dominate the Canadian landscape. That is just not the case in the United States. Yes, banking is huge, healthcare, energy, oil and gas is huge, so is mining, but so are a host of other industries. The technology industry, media, travel and hospitality. There are just so many different industries that you can work in the United States, and they all have their headquarters here. Yes, the technology industry is present in Canada. Yes, so is media, so is healthcare, biotech, all the above. They're all present in Canada, but they're mainly based and headquartered in the United States. That's the biggest difference. So if you want to have a long-lasting career, if you want to climb your way to the top, you're going to have to be located in the United States because that's where all these companies are headquartered. I know for me, when I had my career in the technology industry, I really couldn't think of any company in the technology industry that was headquartered in Canada. As you probably are aware, most tech companies are headquartered in the United States, specifically in Silicon Valley, but also in other cities spread across the United States, like Austin, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina. So the tech industry is huge. It's represented all across the world, but it is headquartered and mainly located in the United States. Tech companies have a pretty sizable presence in Canada, so do many other companies from many other industries, but they're all based and headquartered in the United States. Okay, I think you get my point. America has Hollywood, America has Silicon Valley. Come to think of it, what is Canada's industry? What is Canada known for? Insurance? Maybe fishing? I don't know. Nah. I think you get my point. There's just a lot more to offer in the United States in terms of job opportunities, and there's a lot more variety of jobs that you could find here. All right, reason number 2 why living in America is better than living in Canada is there's just more stuff to do in the United States. Now, by that I mean its cities have more to offer, but so does the country itself. Let's compare the two. All right, so in Canada, half of the country is completely covered in ice and snow all year round. So the Arctic is completely written off for most people on this earth. You just can't access the Arctic. And even if you were to somehow manage to get up there, there's nothing to do there. There's nothing but snow and ice and polar bears. So half the country is just completely inaccessible for the average person. Then in the rest of the country, you have mountains in Western Canada, you have some pretty cool ski resorts, you have the Great Lakes, and you have the East Coast as well as you move further east. But Canada itself as a country does not have much to offer in terms of things that you can see and do, at least when compared to the United States. In the United States, yes, you have mountains. You have the Rocky Mountains located in the western half of the United States. And of course, you also have the Great Lakes. But then in addition to that, you also have deserts located in the southwest of the United States. You have the tropics in Hawaii and in Florida. You have the Mediterranean climate of California. And I also make the argument that the East Coast of the United States is cooler, more awesome than the East Coast of Canada. East Coast of Canada, what's it known for? Fishing? Lighthouses? That's pretty much it. Whereas on the East Coast of the United States, not only do you have amazing beaches pretty much running up and down the entire East Coast, but you have some pretty cool cities along the East Coast. You got Miami, you got New York, you got Boston. Canada's East Coast, what do they have? They got like Halifax, Nova Scotia? Really? Is that like a tourist mecca? No, it's not. No offense, Halifax. I'm pretty sure you guys are cool. You guys seem to be great people, but your city is just not a tourist destination. And there's just more places to see in the United States. In addition to the natural beauty that the country has to offer, there are just more cities that you can visit, and you have more vacation destinations that you'd want to check out. You have Las Vegas, you got Miami, you got New York, you have great cities all across the country. Whereas in Canada, you're pretty limited to the number of cities that you would want to visit. You might want to visit Montreal and Quebec City for its history, maybe visit Vancouver for its natural beauty, Toronto for being really the center of Canada, and maybe you want to visit Ottawa because it's the capital of Canada. But, those pale in comparison to the cities you can see in the United States and the things that you can do in these cities as well. I mean, really, there's no Canadian city that compares to New York or Miami or Las Vegas. There just isn't. All right, I'm going to dive into my third reason why living in America is better than living in Canada. But first, if you're liking what you're seeing so far, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time I come out with other great and similar content. It really helps me out. All right, reason number 3, the sports. There are just more sports in the United States. There are more sports and there are more sporting events. Let me get started with the major sports leagues. The NHL, NFL, MLB, and NBA. If we're looking at the NHL, yes, both US teams and Canadian teams are pretty well represented. The league exists in both countries. Most bigger cities in Canada have the NHL, so Canadians can be occupied throughout the winter months watching hockey, regardless of which city they're in. Most big cities in Canada have a National Hockey League team, which is cool, which is good for them. That is probably the only sport Canadians are going to have access to throughout the year, though, because baseball does not exist outside of Toronto. Basketball does not exist outside of Toronto. And the National Football League just doesn't exist in Canada whatsoever. Okay. You have the Canadian Football League, the CFL, which takes place in the summer and the fall. But the CFL, I mean, no offense, but that is just such an amateur league. It is nothing compared to the NFL. The level of play, the quality of play, the entertainment value you get from it, it pales in comparison to the NFL. It really is amateurish compared to the National Football League and even compared to the NCAA, compared to college football. So I don't consider the CFL to be a top-notch pro sports league. And I think Canada misses out quite a bit by not having the NFL located in its country. But it doesn't end there. There are just more sporting events, period. From the US Open tennis tournament to the US Open golf tournament, the Masters, heck, even the Super Bowl. All of these sporting events take place in the United States. And there is no true comparison in Canada. Yes, there are some tennis tournaments in Canada, and yes, Canada does have the Grey Cup, but like I said, the Grey Cup, the CFL championship, does not compare at all to the Super Bowl in the United States. Nothing really compares. You're kind of comparing apples to oranges in terms of popularity and size and quality. So yeah, the presence of major sporting events in the United States does help things a lot. It makes living in the United States a lot more entertaining because you have a lot more choice in terms of the sports that you can follow and the sports that you can also get involved in and get into. Okay, the fourth reason why living in America is better than living in Canada is undoubtedly the weather. I got into this in one of my previous videos, but I'll dive into it a little bit right now. Long story short, one thing you have to understand is that because Canada is located to the north of the United States, the warmest part of Canada, okay, is colder than the coldest parts of the United States. Canada's south is America's north, all right? So the weather in Canada is horrendously bad throughout most of the year. Even the coldest parts of the United States, I would say that the continental United States, the lower 48, as they say, even the coldest parts of the lower 48 are warmer than the warmest parts of Canada. That's just because Canada is located to the north of the United States. It's a simple fact that Canada's weather is horrible, and it makes living there much more difficult. I don't want to go too much into it because I spoke about it in a previous video, which you can check out right here, but it really does make life in Canada a lot harder, a lot more unpleasant. And in America, we have the ability to live in much more temperate, Mediterranean, or tropical climates, depending on what our preference is. I love the heat, so I live in Florida, but I can easily live in Arizona or California or Hawaii as well. Okay, now I'm going to dive into the last reason why living in America is so much better than living in Canada. But before I do so, I want to let you know that there are more than just 5 reasons why living here is great. There are literally dozens of reasons why America is better than Canada and why living here is so much easier and so much better and so much more fulfilling. I'm not going to dive into it because it could take me hours to do so. I really want to focus on the 5 ways that I can explain in the most simplest manner possible. Okay, so let me dive into the 5th reason why living in America is better than Canada, and that is the travel. Namely, it is so much easier to travel within the United States than it is to travel in Canada. Okay, I'll give you guys an example. A couple of years ago, I took a road trip from the East Coast to the West Coast of the United States. And yeah, the trip was long. I drove the whole way. It took me about 3 days. But there was a major network of highways leading me from the East Coast to the West Coast. And as long as I just followed the highway, it was pretty easy. I got to my final destination on time and in one piece. In Canada, traveling from east to west is not that easy. Canada does not have that major network of highways linking the various parts of Canada. There's actually only one road linking Eastern Canada to Western Canada. And interesting fact, in 2016, a bridge along that highway had somehow gotten damaged and it broke and in essence cut the country in two, where Eastern Canada was completely cut off from Western Canada by car. You could not travel by car between Eastern and Western Canada. You had to fly or take a train. But in essence, Canada was cut in two. Yeah, that would just never happen here in the United States. And so it's things like these that make traveling within Canada pretty difficult. It is easy to get around maybe your province or your region. If you want to go from Montreal to Toronto, or maybe from Calgary to Edmonton, if you want to stay within a couple hours of your hometown, traveling might not be that difficult. But if you're traveling long distances, let's say from one end of the country to the next, is really hard to do so. Like in the example I gave from 2016, one bridge broke down and it cut off one end of the country from the other. That's ridiculous. That would never happen in the United States. In the United States, in America, you can get around very easily with your car, or of course, by air as well. And that brings me to my next point. Air travel in the United States is so much more convenient and so much cheaper. I know the airline industry is in a bit of a funk right now, but let's just look online for some flights that we can compare. Let's do a comparison of East Coast to West Coast flights. We'll pick one-way flights nonstop between an East Coast destination and a West Coast destination for both Canada and the United States. So, got my laptop here. I'm going to pick Miami. Let's see, an East Coast destination, so Miami to LA. Let's see how much a flight from Miami to LA would cost. Let's pick a date. Let's pick June 1st. June 1st. Let's see. June 1st, Miami to LA. How much is that going to cost me? Non-stop, one way. What's that going to be? Okay. All right, here we go. $149 for a one-way flight nonstop from Miami to LA. Okay. Now, the equivalent of that in Canada, an East Coast to West Coast flight would be, let's say, Montreal to Vancouver. I think that would be a pretty good equivalent, a pretty good route that we can compare to. So let's go ahead and check out how much that would cost. Remember, it was $149 to fly from Miami to LA, Montreal to Vancouver, a similar distance. How much would that cost? And we'll calculate this in US dollars to keep things equal. Okay, and the cheapest flight I found was with Air Canada, and it's $326. $326 to fly from the eastern part of Canada to the western part of Canada, nonstop, one way. So that is more than double the price of a domestic flight in the United States from the east to the west. So as you can see, travel within Canada is just so much more expensive. With all the taxes and the fees they put into your airfare, it is just ridiculously expensive to travel within Canada. Whereas in the United States, getting to where you want to go is actually pretty cheap. Well, that's it, guys. I hope you appreciated the information. Keep in mind that anytime you see a video out there that says like Canada is better than the United States, no, don't listen to it. You can go ahead and completely disregard that video and the contents of the video. All right, I'm talking about real things, real everyday things here. But I want to get your thoughts. Have you ever lived in both countries? What have your experiences been? And what do you prefer? Do you prefer living in America or do you prefer living in Canada? I'd love to get your feedback. Don't forget to drop your comments in the comments section below. I'm looking forward to hearing from you all. Talk soon, guys.